The Aurignacian culture thrived in the Polygonal Wall Range. Roughly 100,000 years ago, and globally, the then already reigning last glacial would only get colder and colder, and also more arid and dustier. This was also roughly the case between 47,000 to 41,000 years ago, when the Aurignacian culture thrived in the Polygonal Wall Range. Obviously all living cultures, including any eventual Atlantis-likes, would have noticed the ongoing further cooling, and possibly had studied that same pattern during former glacials, which all followed roughly the same pattern of continuous further cooling. This latest ice age, as all others before, present a cyclus of roughly 100,000 years of getting colder, more arid and dustier, and if they were studying it, especially so if they also had studied former ice ages, they would have been very much and painfully aware of the 100,000 years of getting colder, more arid and dustier, that lie in front of them. That is also the probable reason certain ancients extensively studied climate and even long-term cycles, like also the related 25,700 years long precession cycle of the Earth axis, in all or many of its aspects, even in aspects that the general public of today, and even the majority of our scientists today, are not aware of, or certainly not familiar with. So in this respect a number of ancients can be safely regarded as advanced. Advanced culture in the Andes. Any advanced culture in the Andes, where at least part of the ancestral markers point out the core of our ancestors in the neighboring Amazon forest. Probably many people are not aware that even a place like Machu Picchu in the Andes in Peru, 2,430 meters above sea level, is neighboring the Amazon forest, and even is part of the Amazon watershed, which means that every drop falling on Machu Picchu and around it will drain in the Atlantic Ocean in Belém, this through the Amazon River. If for simplicity we call the advanced cultures in the Andes like part of a global Atlantis-like culture, then those cultures that resided in the Andes could have and very likely came under pressure to make expeditions, amongst other to mine, amongst others for their building materials, also or mainly to warmer and at the same time resource-rich zones in other continents, and to eventually prepare such intercontinental zones to become more suited for them to expand to and or to migrate to. This would be so at least until the next interglacial or warmer period, that roughly would start only 100,000 years later, which now is roughly 8,000 years ago, and we today call the Holocene. As said, that interglacial or warmer period called the Holocene came in full swing, this only 8,000 years ago, with a few important events roughly 13,000 years ago. These important events roughly 13,000 years ago are closely related to the so-called Younger Dryas, the extinction of megafauna as well as the extinction of certain human groups, like also the Clovis people in the Americas, which according to us were more related to megafauna handling than to hunter-gathering, and also Göbekli Tepe, which we consider one of the famous places the groups affected by the ice ages expanded and or migrated to. Aurignacian ranges for mining and building. In other words, in these prospective suitable regions they would need to start mining and eventually building well in advance. Next they would need to prepare the much more robust and earthquake-resistant polygonal foundations and structures for their planned and future cultures, that at least in cases include Acropolis-like structures as well as essential water structures for some of the planned cultures and or locations or cities, like possibly in the main Aurignacian culture locations, like for instance in the stretch between Gibraltar and the foot of Italy. Like possibly also in the Lazio region in Italy, with the province of Rome in its center, in a way also laying the basis of much later empires, including the much later Roman Empire. Ancestral markers. Also from ancestral markers we already know they were out of Americans, and at that time they disposed mainly of Y-DNA haplogroup Q, this also to send out first, most probably for initial reconnaissance and supervising. Next to Q they provingly also disposed of Y-DNA haplogroup C, but also of Neanderthals and Denisovans. Y-DNA haplogroup Q, as well as C today are largely replaced by the today dominant R1b, this so roughly until 4,500 years ago. We know this because modern and ancient DNA provided by our scientists prove us that information. It is just consensus as well as the alternative historians that keep on negating, and do not pass on what our modern and most advanced science provide to us all, for us to make correct and rational use of. Consequently, the general public stays unaware of these disruptive and revolutionizing discoveries of our most advanced and active scientists. Initially, all these mentioned ancient groups would be sent out exclusively or dominantly from South America, and this dominantly to the warmer and resource-rich future polygonal building regions or range, like also the range of the Aurignacian culture, that lived and worked in close association with Neanderthals, and eventually several other archaics. In this Aurignacian culture range in which the polygonal structures provingly were planned, and would be built several tens of thousands of years ago, even today you still find low frequencies of the ancestor Y DNA haplogroup Q and C amongst the modern humans, which today are dominantly R1b, and obviously fossils, and also low frequencies of the Neanderthals and other archaics classes and DNA. When it comes to the region of the polygonal walls in Europe and Western Eurasia, the found fossils are dominantly classified as Neanderthals. Nevertheless, Denisovan fossils are found there as well amongst some of the oldest of fossils. Resource-rich mountain ranges exclusively for mining and not for building. In our hypothesis, modern human supervisors and working-class Neanderthals would also be sent, or together took part in expeditions to the Lincombian-Ranisian-Jerzmanowician, LRJ, rich resource mountain ranges. This to harvest essential ores and resources they did not find or not enough in the by them inhabited polygonal structures range itself. Contrary to the polygonal structures range, in these exceptional ranges they would not prepare similar polygonal structures, nor Acropolis-like structures for their cultures, because these locations were too cold for these cultures, and or too isolated from the routes these humans needed to explore and control. It is obvious that wherever necessary they would turn over or replace species already in place in their destinations, especially those that could somehow hinder them. That also implies that the Neanderthals were not hindering them. Quite on the contrary. Migrate to, settle and control the prepared range. Once the essential and or sufficient basic polygonal structures were in place, the Aurignacian culture or their elite class people, who both were modern humans. Even Consensus accepts that, would migrate and consequently arrive and thrive in the already carefully and sustainably, for them prepared, range, like also the Aurignacian culture range subject of this video. Please comment with your doubts and remarks, as we pretend to complete or to remake this same video, for it to become more useful and or understandable for you and others. Also ask for more or better illustrations and or proofs, if this need would exist. Please remember that you cannot call yourself alternative historians or historians if you do not bring history or do not bring a fully scientifically supported history without too many paradigms, like Consensus still does, and most historians, even alternative historians, now do, this at least the ones that are more notorious and that we are aware of. Thank you.